Goeienaand en welkom, dankie dat julle ingeskakel het weer eens. Ter ouder gewoonte op 'n Sondag aand 7 uur, hier by Klipkop. En ons lees uit die dagboek van Jan van Riebeeck. In laasweek se episode, ons het afgeëindig met die Wes-Friesland wat hier aangeland het, met 'n hele spul siek en oorlede mense. Wes-Friesland het 'n baie moeilike tog gehad tot hierso. Blanke veediefstal, die Vryburgers wat vee gaan slag het, toe was hulle oë was te groot vir hulle maag gewees. Toe van die vee is half afgeslag daar in 'n bos gekry gewees, en Jan van Riebeeck het die mense in hulle moeren geslaan, gesweep en gestrawe is uitgedien. Daar was 'n ekspedisie gewees waar hulle vir die AWOL slawe gaan loop soek het, en hulle het gepraat van die baie wild, honderde glo, olifante en renosters, en so aan. As ook Eva versprei die gospel, dat die Hollanders is nie so swak, dis wat hy uitmaak die mense sê nie. Maar in vanaand se episode gaan ons actually sien waar sy die actual gospel van Jesus Christus versprei. Maar voordat ons in die boek inspring, wil ek eers 'n hallo sê vir die mense in die kletskolom. Ek sê goeienaand aan Christo D, wat heel eerste was in die kletskolom. Away. Goeienaand. As ook Mike Simpson, ek neem aan, ek sien ja, Finnie Simpson is ook daar in die agtergrond. Goeienaand en welkom Mike en Finnie Simpson. Brendan Campbell, ek is gestort en in die bed. My gashietertjie is aan. Ek wil vir my ook 'n gashietertjie aanskaf. Want elektrisiteit is duur. Verskriklik, is nou al amper R3 'n unit. Ek werk maar spaarsamig met my klikshietertjie. En dankie vir daai gunsetjie Brendan, ek het hom gekry, dankie word, jy's 'n eyster. En dan is anti-Marxist ZA ook in die kletskolom, met 'n dab. Ek gee hierdie stukkie klaar ook, voor ek inspring. Wat sê julle van, met die groot storie is eintlik Jacob Zuma nie, die groot storie is eintlik die mense wat Natal besig is om af te brand. Want ek het nou al so genoeg in die media gesien, dis asof hierdie besigheid is genormaliseer. Die ding is, druk hier my oon. Dis genormaliseer hierdie besigheid van mense brand en breek. Hulle hou nie daarvan dat Jacob Zuma gearresteer is nie. Nou gaan brand hulle ander man se winkel af. Hoe werk dit? Wat het daardie man met daai winkel aan daai mense gedoen? Christo D sê hulle brand glo in Gauteng ook af. Ja, die twee dae so half de mekaar geraak. Ek het aangeneem alles is in Natal. Dit maak my in Gauteng is daar ook moeilikheid. Waar trek ons nou? Ek het hom kort geknip laasweek by die 28ste Oktober 1658. Ek wou eintlik Oktober klaar gemaak het, maar weer eens, het was so baie leeswerk vanaand. En ek wil nie oor goed spring nie. Van ek gou so 'n slukkie van my boere troos. Oké, daar is nou eers genoeg. Ek sien Bebop Williams is ook in die kletskolom. Goeienaand, Bebop Williams. Mike Simpson praat van 17.000 taxis wat môre in Durban gaan wees. Dit is 'n klein huisie vol taxis. En ek moenie oor goed spring nie. Nou maar toe, dan gaan die boek net langer vat. Ek moes dit so lank die kameraatjie hier neer. Ek dink hy is reg ingestel al klaar. Dit is hom. Hier kan ons nou sien, ons het laasweek geëindig hier met die Wes-Friesland, waar die mense so beginne gesond word, so that of the 151 sick, only 60 were still indisposed. En Eva was weggewees na haar mense toe, maar is nou nog net so 2 of 3 weke, en hierso kom sy nou terug. Hulle sê vir ons, today an ox and 39 sheep were bartered from some Cochoquas, with whom the interpreter Eva arrived at the fort in the evening. She stated that when she left the fort, the Kaapmans had robbed her of everything on the way, and that her mother, living with the Kaapmans, had not taken steps to have it restored. Natuurlijk, Jan en sy manne het vir haar 'n klomp persente en goed gegee om saam te vat vir Udosua. Natuurlijk om sy gunst te wen, maar dit smaak met die Kaapmans het hierdie goed afgevat. She is one of the wives of Udosua, one of the two greatest captains, and had not seen Eva since she was a baby. Eva, who was received with great joy, told her sister's husband, Udosua, all about our nation, and in particular explained to him our desire to live with them on friendly terms, and also that she had been educated by the commander's wife in her house and had learnt our language and also partly our religion. Udosua was likely well disposed towards us, and to prove this had now and then sent some of his men to bring sheep and cattle to us. He desired to enter into an alliance with us, but was prevented by the Kaapmans and Cochoquas, being afraid that we would help the latter. For that reason, Udosua did not dare to visit the commander in spite of Eva's efforts to persuade him and the examples adduced by her for the forbearance displayed by us in the face of the serious wantonness and annoyance which she had to endure from time to time from the Kaapmans and the Cochoquas. Dis groot Engels vanaand. Dit raak hom 'n bietjie beter. On being asked whether it would not be advisable to send commissioners with presents to Udosua, she agreed that it would, and added that cinnamon, which the Hottentots had earnestly requested, should be sent, and also cloves, nutmegs, mace and pepper, to see whether they liked them also, and the very strongest brandy and tobacco obtainable. Also, 1 or 2 persons could play on the fiddle and other instruments, as the Hottentots were very fond thereof. In fact, whatever might serve to draw them here and amuse them. Ek het nog al 'n subnote hier gemaak, brannas en musiek is wat die ouens wil hê. She was told that the interpreter Duman was daily warning against us, the Cochoquas, that he stated that they were very hostile towards us and wished to burn down our houses and kill the men, and that he had accordingly requested us to lend him 20 soldiers to make war on the Cochoquas and seize their cattle, as the majority of them were ill at present and they were therefore at their weakest. So Duman is nou met 'n gedagte, hy wil hê Jan van Riebeeck moet die Cochoquas aanval. She replied, dis nou natuurlik Eva, Duman lies, he is a worthless fellow and speaks with a double tongue. He tries to incite the Dutch against the Cochoquas and the Cochoquas against the Dutch. For this reason, she added, Udosua did not dare come here. He could easily rout them, but they always threatened him with our troops, of whom all the natives were so afraid that if they heard us talk about and even saw the houses, especially the fort from a distance, they shivered and shook from fear. How then could they dare to think of doing us any harm, as Duman alleged? Udosua had said that we should not assist any of the Hottentot tribes, but should leave them to do unto one another in peace and war as they thought best. She was told that such was our inclination, and shown by the conditions of peace made with the Kaapmans. Dit is natuurlijk daai kontrak wat opgestel is. who did not carry them out, for they tried to keep back the Cochoquas instead of bringing them to us as they had promised. She answered, Yes, I was present at the time, and I told Udasua about it. But Udasua had said, Well, why don't the Dutch take their cattle? On which she said that she had rejoined, Because they are such good and forbearing people. She added that she would have returned sooner, but she had been very ill, as also her sister, Udasua's wife, whom she had taught how to pray to our blessed Lord. So daar versprei sy die actual gospel. To which, as she said and indicated by action, all the natives listened with tears in their eyes, instead of laughing like Duman and the Kaapmans, who always laughed at her whenever she spoke to them of our Lord. The Cochoquas had, however, told her to learn everything carefully from us, so that she could teach them, because she said she had prayed night and day, and when she was not sleepy or asleep, until her sister also had recovered. She had thereupon instructed her sister how God was to be thanked for her recovery. This was very pleasing to the natives, who were desirous for further instruction. So Eva lewer getuienis. The Kaapmans and the Cochoquas were, however, very angry with her, and would have killed her long ago if they had not feared us. We told her that we had been rather afraid on her account, because she had stayed away so long. She replied, Oh no, meneer, be not troubled. They dare not, as they are too afraid of meneer's men, adding various other statements of the same nature, too long to be detailed. Maar toe daar's Eva nou terug by die fort. Ek het hierdie in 'n notaatjie gegee. Die van Herwarden ekspedisie, die tweede ene, op die 30ste Oktober 1658. We have learned from the interpreter Eva, who returned last night from the interior, of the desire of the Cochoquas for friendly intercourse and trade with us, and of their request that we should not assist the Kaapmans and the Cochoquas or their followers with our arms, with which they are daily threatened by the Kaapmans and the Cochoquas. The latter state further that we intend to rob the Cochoquas of their cattle and to imprison their paramount chief in the fort, just the reverse of what is continually reported to us by Duman, who is strongly beseeching us to assist the Kaapmans and the Cochoquas. Therefore, in view of the great necessity of obtaining more cattle for the honourable company by means of barter than can be obtained from the Kaapmans tribe, it has been decided, on the advice of the said interpreter, to send to Udasua, chief of the Cochoqua, who is now in the neighbourhood, a large expedition under the command of Ensign Jan van Herwarden, accompanied by an escort of 15 well-armed soldiers, with some nice presents for himself and offers of friendship, and also a message that we desire to enter into a closer alliance with him. The ensign and the interpreter have been ordered to do their best to bring Udasua to the fort, to enable us to treat him even better and bring about an interview between him and the commander, with a view to establishing lasting friendship, as stipulated in the oral instructions. Thus done and resolved in the fort of Goede Hoop on the above date. Janeman en Roelof Jan van Herwarden, Abram, Gabema. Hulle gaan nou hierso begin 'n pak en trek, Jan van Herwarden net toe. Preparations were at once set afoot for the expedition. Dan sê hulle, daar is nou al die goed wat hulle saamvat. Julle kan sien, hulle het 'n klein huisie goed, vol goed, saamgevat. Dan, Eva had mentioned all these articles besides other matters, and neither she nor the 4 men of the Cochoquas wished that any of the Kaapmans or Cochoquas should go or return with them, but that everything should be done without their assistance, which accorded with our view and was accordingly carried out in the hope that the Lord God would crown this venture with success in the best interests of the honourable company. Nou, Dumaan hou nie van hierdie verwikkelinge nie. Dumaan hou niks van hierdie verwikkelinge nie. Hulle sê dat, meanwhile the Kaapmans tribe did not know what was going on and dared not ask what was the purpose of this expedition. Fortunately, Dumaan was detained on board, otherwise his presence would have been a great hindrance, as he is very impertinent and pokes his nose into everything. When he landed in the afternoon and heard what had taken place, he was very angry and asked why we made friends with the Cochoquas, who were the enemies of the Kaapmans and the Cochoquas. He was told that we desired the friendship of all the natives living here without exception, who wished only to trade with us and be friendly. If the Kaapmans and Cochoquas feared annoyance, they might, as had often been suggested to them, retire behind the Gevelbergen of the Cape, where, as we explained, we would protect them and were, so we hoped, we could confine them. Thereupon he and Pieter Otengo, third son of Cochoqua, chief of the Kaapmans, replied that the Kaapmans had already moved their camp to the Steenbergen and the Kloof Pass, and should the Cochoquas come nearer, they intend to retire further into the Hout Valley. Nou, ons nou al 'n paar keer van tevore hiervan gehoor, die Gevelbergen. Kom ek trek hom gou hierso vir julle op, hier op die desktop. Dis die 12 apostels hier in die Kaap. Ek kan nie so mooi sien nie. Hier is Tafelberg wat hier lê, dan lê die 12 apostels hier nou. Hierdie is nou die Gevelberge. Nou maar hier, net hier onder hierdie stukkie hierso, is waar mens deurgaan na Houtbaai toe. So hy wil nou die manne hier onder trap. Nou ek het hierdie ding sommer 'n naam gegee. As ons nou weer daarna verwys, dan praat ons van die Houtbaai lokval. Hy het al baie hiervan gepraat, maar dit nog nooit actually gedoen nie. Maar baie daarvan gepraat. Hier het ek 'n notaatjie gemaak, Dumaan waarsku. Dumaan this morning again visited the commander and told him that the ensign and his men would certainly never return but would be killed by the Cochoquas. And that we were not to suspect the Kaapmans and Cochoquas thereof. In reply to this doubtful excuse made in advance, he was told that we knew better, that the Cochoquas and other true Soldaners only wished to trade with us and desired our friendship, but that if our men suffered the least harm, none but the Kaapmans would be held responsible and revenge would be taken against them, so that they should be careful that they did what they did or proposed to do. Dumaan thereupon said, "Yes, I hear the commander wishes to make friends with the Cochoquas and all the Soldaners. This is not good, and it's Eva's fault." He stated that the Kaapmans were very angry with Eva, but admitted that Udasua's chief wife was the sister of Eva, a most fortunate thing for the honourable company. Kan jy nou sien wat hier gebeur? As mens so 'n bietjie uitzoom, toe Jan hier aankom, toe sy so in 'n sterk alliansie met die strandlopers, die Cochoquas, die Goringakona. En toe was dit so half van, ja, maar die Kaapmans is so, Harry het so half die compagnie opgesweep teen die Kaapmans. toe op die ouens van die dag, toe sê die kompanjoen, ja, maar die strandlopers, nee wat, ons gaan in 'n alliansie met die Kapens. Nou dat die alliansie gesluit is met die Kapens, nou begin lyk dit asof, nee man, bogger die Kapens ook, dis nou 'n groter chief waarvan hulle weet, hulle wil nou eerder in 'n alliansie met hierdie groter chief gaan. Ek neem aan dit het maar so stelselmatig op mekaar gebou. Hoekom kan ons dan nie 'n sigaretjie opsteek nie? O genade. Ek mag eintlik. Hier lê op my skot. Mike Simpson sê, hoor nou die hoofseun hou family meeting weer vanaand. Hier kom weer groot bollies. Family meeting, is dit nou die Big Six? Of gaan die Cyril Ramaphosa actually vanaand praat en uitsaai? Ek weet nie wat gaan daar in die ANC aan nie, ek ben wat, hy se Magashule en daai ouens. Ek sien nou, wat is die etter se naam nou weer? Karl Neus. Hy is ook oor die vingers getik gewees. Ek het daai video gesien van Karl Neus, dit smaak my, of so wat dit vir my voorkom, is hierdie besigheid is baie gestage. Is asof ons so 'n poppekas kyk, jy weet. Asof dit so half 'n plan is, dan dat dit so half lyk asof die ANC iets probeer doen, jy weet. Gooi hulle die enigste regte kameraad, gooi hulle onder die bus. Ons arresteer vir hom. So Cyril praat, dan moet ek mos gou maak. Wel, ek gaan net sê extended level vol. Kom ek sluk gou my koffie klaar, dan nip ek die sigaret halfpad. Dan kyk ons hoe ver ons kom voor 8:00. Ons weet dan nou, Cochoqua is terug, en dit lyk vir my Jan en sy manne, hulle worry nie meer baie oor Domani. Hulle wil nou vriende maak hier by Udasua en die Cochoqwas. Is nou in hierdie gedeelte in die boek, waar ons nogal baie van Cochoqua begin lees. Maar ek het mos op julle so half 'n spoiler gegee in die begin, dat sy gaan weer 'n bepilgrimage, so dis nou hierdie episode, gaan ons nog baie hoor, ek weet nie hoe baie van haar nog gaan kom in die toekoms nie, maar dit smaak my sy gaan vir 'n tydjie weg wees. Al julle maatjies uit julle gaatjies, ons gaan lekker poppekas hou. Toe ek die sigaret nou lekker. Oké. Maar ek nip gou die oukie. Gaan gou 'n swing van die water ook vat. Jo, ek het so baie koffie vandag gedrink. Water ook drink, anders sal opstaan my niere. Oké. Ek wil graag daar wees. In die van Herwarden ekspedisie nommer 2. Towards evening, the ensign Jan van Herwarden, with all his men and one of the Cochoqwas, returned, bringing 3 cows, 2 calves, and 19 sheep as a present to the commander from the great captain of the Cochoqwas named Udasua. They had, however, been paid for. The captain had accepted the present sent to him with great pleasure and had treated our men well. He could not, however, make up his mind to come with them, excusing himself on the grounds that his chief wife was big with child and ill. It appeared that she was own sister of the interpreter Eva. He was a beardless man, elderly, small and thin, very stately and enjoying great authority among his people. It appeared that neither he nor any of his men had ever seen a Christian before. They had asked whether the Dutch chief was also of high descent, and what sort of people they were, and who the ensign's ancestors were. Answers were given as required. The whole night was spent in providing entertainment for the ensign, who entertained them on his part with the fiddle. So Jan van Herwarden het daar loop viool speel, while a variety of tricks were performed by a certain soldier to the great amusement of the chief and all his people. Only towards daybreak did they sleep a little. After that, and the enjoyment of as much sweet milk as the men desired, the party took their leave, and our ensign was accompanied by Udasua with a following of quite 1,000 people, a distance of half an hour on the road. The captain declared that he desired to live in friendship with the Dutch commander and would allow his people to sell as many cattle as they could spare. But as there was not enough pasturage in the neighborhood for their cattle and little water to drink, which the ensign confirmed, they could not come nearer. But if the commander sent them copper and beads, he would allow his people to trade. So dit maak met die ou het net te veel vee om nader te kom. Hy het maar net te veel vee. Wat is hierdie? Toch vir julle die prentjies ook wys. Cover letter addressed to Jan van Riebeeck. Ek vind die ouens het baie lelik geskryf daai tyd. Die mense wat hierdie handskrif kan decodeer, kan dit loop doen, maar ek kan nie lees wat daar staan nie. The ensign declared that in the army of the States General, where he had long served, he had never seen so many men together, distributed over a number of camps or armies, all equally strong men, living in large round huts made of mats at least 30 or 40 feet in diameter. Toe ek nou hierdie gelees, was ek nogal soos in, ek het nie hulle daai size hutte gebou nie, ek gedoog net die kleinkies. Udasua had 3 such houses for himself, much larger even, and as full of assegais, arrows and bows as if they were armor rooms. His sleeping place was on a very fine mat in a hole in the ground. Like all the Hottentots, he was dressed in skins, and so besmeared that the fat ran down his body, which was the highest mark of distinction. Nou toe ek daardie stukkie gelees het, dacht my so Afrikaanse slagspreek om iemand vet te smeer, to butter someone up. Is dit dalk een van die oorspronge van daardie sê ding nie, om iemand vet te smeer? Dit maak nou as jy 'n koninklike is in die kooi gemeenskap, dan smeer hulle vir jou vet. The cattle were so numerous that no end to them could be seen. In half a day they would clear all the pastures within the whole circumference of the Cape and whatever besides the company and freemen possessed. This morning it was observed that the sheep took 3 hours to leave the kraals, and the cattle not less. The latter were larger than any oxen in the fatherland could be, or that he had seen there, being, according to his account, fully 2.5 feet broad on the back and buttocks, and so high that he, a very tall person, could scarcely look over the backs of the animals, or reach their backs with his elbow. In short, this was a very powerful nation, rich in cattle and able, so they said, to drive the carpents into their holes if they wished. They, however, cared so little for the carpents that they would take no notice of them unless they became too troublesome. We therefore need not spare the carpents on their account, and if we were inclined to go thither, we would trade freely and openly with them. Nou maar daar so, die binneland is nou veilig, want dis so half die okay signal. Die mense kan maar binneland toe gaan, hulle gaan nie aangeval word nie. En ek dink daar gaan nou, van hier af vorentoe gaan daar nog baie ekspedisies wees. The ensign further stated that if he had copper and beads with him, though he arrived there late last night, he could quickly have bought a large number of cattle, but he told them that he had come solely with gifts for the chief Udasua from the Dutch commander. He was fetched in by Udasua, at whose commands his pack ox was at once driven among the chief's own, and orders were given for the protection of our men and their goods. Thereupon the council adopted the following resolution. Nou maar ek nou nie die resolusie heeltemal deurlees nie, dis basies 'n herhaling van wat ons nou net gelees het. Ek gaan net die finale resolusie is belangrik. Waar hulle sê, it was quickly resolved and orders were given to prepare a goodly quantity of merchandise consisting of copper beads, tobacco, etc. to dispatch the ensign again as yesterday with an escort of soldiers to take another present to Udasua and to purchase a large number of cattle, done and resolved in die goeie hoop. En hier gaat ons nou die van Herwarden ekspedisie, die derde een. The two runaway slaves of the Vryburger Stephen Jansen returned last night in a famished condition. So smaak met die ouens het 'n bietjie honger gekry. Daar's nog slawe wat in die veld is, wat nog weggehardloop het, 'n stuk of 10 of 15. Kan nog onthou van die vorige episodes. Maar ek wonder gaan ek deur al hierdie goed lees. Ek gaan seker moet. In the morning, the ensign Jan van Herwarden left 2 hours before daybreak with the envoys of the Cochoqua chief Udasua and 17 soldiers, also a wagon drawn by 6 oxen and laden with another present for Udasua and merchandise to be exchanged for cattle, consisting of the following. En maar daar kan julle sien, 'n hele lys. 866 pond koperplaat en draad in wyn in allerhande lekkernye. The ensign was ordered to treat Udasua with the greatest kindness, and through the interpreter Eva, so dit smaak my Eva gaan nou saam met hulle, sister to his chief wife, to advance our interest in the most favorable manner in order that the chief might assist us with men to protect the merchandise and the cattle obtained, and also to help drive the latter here, with the promise that they would be well rewarded. Otherwise this work could ill be performed by our men, as the cattle are unaccustomed to them. We hope to achieve success in this venture in 3 or 4 days. Nou daar het Eva die gospel versprei, en hulle stuur nou aan mekaar vir Eva saam, en het smaak my, as sy by is of sy praat saam, dan gaan die veehandel gaan sommer uitstekend. In the meantime, these Cape Hottentots were surprised when they found that our men had left early in the morning with the Cochoquas before they had become aware of it. It was also the case with Chayantima, who also left, promising, like the Cochoquas, to return in a few days with many cattle, so as to curry special favor with us. To encourage him, he was also given a small present, and he then left. In all these ventures may the Almighty grant the great success they seem to promise. Daar praat hulle nou nog 'n bietjie oor die Wes-Friesland. Hoekom sê ek nou nie aan mekaar die hele Wes-Friesland ding oor te lees nie. Hy gaan nou net dat hy bye sê. Seker nie nou nie. Nou hier is nou die Albert Dirksen ekspedisie. Sien, dis nou die 4de, die 5de, die 6de, so die van Herwarden, die 3de van Herwarden ekspedisie is nou al klaar so 4 of 5 dae, en die Cochoquas is nie baie ver nie. So nou, whereas the wife of the ensign Jan van Herwarden, as is natural with women, was getting somewhat anxious about her husband, who was expected to have returned by today from the Cochoquas, to whom he had been dispatched on the 2nd as recorded, some Vryburgers, not farmers, offered to go and look for the ensign and his men. So die manne, hulle wil ook 'n bietjie veld toe gaan. Vryburgers wil ook 'n bietjie veld toe gaan. Kom ons sit tog net op, anderster klaar die mense wat wat alles wil deurlees. After an agreement had been made with these travelers or adventurers to provide them as aforesaid and to reward them with 30 stivers for every sheep obtained. Dus maak my Jan sê, dis okay, julle kan maar gaan soek vir hulle. They headed for the fisherman's hut at the Salt River, intending to start from there after midnight, and if possible, to reach the ensign before noon tomorrow. Dan kyk wat gebeur nou. Daar kom hy van Herwarden ekspedisie terug die volgende dag, maar dit smaak my, hulle het verby mekaar gestap, en die groepie het gegaan, en hulle het nie mekaar geconnect nie. About 10 o'clock in the morning, the ensign with all his men returned in good spirits with 203 sheep and 25 old and young head of cattle, having obtained 100 sheep and 7 head of cattle from Eva's brother-in-law Udasua, the second most important captain, and the rest from the first great captain of the Cochoquas, named Ngonomua. Ek moet dit geoefen het voor die tyd. Ngonomua, who had also visited. The demands for beads was quickly satisfied. All their copper wire was disposed of before they could look around. If more of the latter had been available, they could apparently have brought back twice as many sheep, but the natives were loath to part with their cattle. However, much copper wire and plates were offered for them. The trade with Udasua, Eva's brother-in-law, would also have gone better if some of the Cochoquas or tobacco thieves had not arrived among them in the meantime and immediately caused a hindrance in the trade, as related by Eva. So Eva pimpie ander manne. The ensign therefore proceeded to Ngonomua, from whom he obtained the rest of the bartered stock, having expended all his copper wire. He left yesterday morning to return here with 2 young carpmen who had joined his party there and had served as interpreters at Ngonomua's. The ensign reported that Ngonomua's cattle were as numerous as the grass on the veld, and therefore the natives were obliged never to stay long at one place, as the pasture was often quickly eaten bare, and this was the cause of their tracking from one place to another. With 20 or 30 good soldiers, it would be possible to take 15,000 or 16,000 sheep and cattle from them without a blow. This Ngonomua was the very person called by us the Black Captain. En die mense wat nog van die begin af saamvolg, sal weet wie die Black Captain is. Who had visited the commander at the fort 5 years ago on the night before Harry carried off the honorable company's cattle. He inquired about Harry, and when he had received a reply, gave a faint smile, which he can affect as well as a Mennonite preacher. The commander had always had his eye on this black captain with a view to obtaining an ample booty from him as compensation for that robbery, for he has not been here since, and it has therefore always been thought that he was equally guilty with Harry. Nou dit smaak my, hulle hou net van die helfte van die Cochoquas, die heel groot bas, Ngonomua, hulle hou nie so baie van hom nie, hulle dink hy is verdag, hulle dink dat Ngonomua vir Harry opgesteek het, om hierdie klomp vee te loop steel. The other great captain, Udasua, Eva's brother-in-law, though of smaller stature and only a second among the Cochoqua chiefs, was a much more stately and imposing man, and by no means so mean or given to begging as Ngonomua, who is, like all his people, much given that way. They were the same people against whom the ensign had been warned in March when the Honourable Cunius was here. While he and his party were in the interior, they had intended to attack them and murder all the men for the sake of the copper and tobacco. Also, a few days before the robbery by Harry. Dink so skief. When this same ensign was fishing in the Salt River, they had driven him off and had even then intended to kill him. The chief owes the honourable company something for his mischief, and therefore, as before observed, we have always kept an eye on him. It is hoped that he will again come to the fort with as few men as in 1652, when he lay with more than 20,000 cattle behind the Salt River and the fort and daily came to display them. Although not a single head of cattle could be bought, he did the same in 1655, which the Honourable Van Goens on his way home witnessed, and in the same autumn when the Honourable Frisius arrived here. He was encamped in the neighbourhood and was visited in his camp by the Honourable Frisius and the commander, but he was no more prepared to sell a single head of cattle than before, and as he is doing now, merely helped himself by begging. So hulle hou niks van hierdie groter captain nie, hulle hou baie van Udasua, maar niks van Ngonomua nie. Die simpsleier wil graag weet waar kry ons skakels na die boeke toe. Skakels is in die beskrywing. Daar kan julle hom lees. Die van Herwarden ekspedisie. Die 4de een. Mense, ons is nog eers klaar met November en die uur is al amper op sy rug. Nou sit en lees ons maar so. Ek het nie nodig om al hierdie te lees nie. Hier praat hulle net van waarvan die ouens hou. It has therefore been decided after deliberation to send as soon as possible another expedition to this great captain Ngonomua. Dis maak my Udasua is nou redelik, weet, al sy vee is verkoop, maar hulle glo by Ngonomua kan hulle nog vee en bees en goed kry. Should some of the merchandise be left over after trade with Ngonomua has come to an end, the expedition is to proceed to the camp of the Cochoquas. Therefore, these three tribes, of whom the Cochoquas was the most powerful, enclose or with their encampments cut off the whole region between both the seas of India towards the east and Ethiopia to the west. Nou ek kon niks sin uitmaak van wat hulle hier bedoel het nie. Daar kan julle beter sin uitmaak. They travel over the whole breadth of the land between the mountains and through beautiful valleys, and therefore advantage must be taken of their presence in the neighborhood. It was accordingly been decided to have everything prepared for the third expedition by tomorrow night, and to dispatch the ensign with 17 or 18 of the bravest and fittest soldier with a wagon drawn by 6 oxen and laden with everything required for the trade, and also a fair present for the chiefs of those tribes. Nou, ek het 'n paar keer hier deurgelees, en dit smaak my hulle gee baie meer duidelikheid van waar presies hierdie groepies, waar hulle operate, waar hulle goed doen, maar ek kon nie lekker uitmaak presies waarvan hulle praat nie. Dalk is hulle ook nie heeltemal seker nie. Ek gaan net daar weer eens vir julle opsit, vir die mense wat op die kyk weer is. Dalk kan julle dit uitfigure. Laat weet my asseblief in die kommentaar. Hier gaan nou Vryburgers AWOL. Between 11 and 12 o'clock at night, the West Friesland left by moonlight with a south-southeasterly breeze. Hulle stuur saam in die West Friesland also the half-orm Cape Bier for trial, and 12 young ostriches as presents for Indian potentates and in particular for the Emperor of Japan. Nou, hier kom het nou eindelijk. Today the free fishermen, nou ons weet die vissermanne was baie ywerig geweest. Martin Jochumsen Flockhart and another Jan Adriansen, both of Der Goude, were missed. Last night they had sailed to the ship West Friesland in a small boat and stowed away. Though the ship was searched by the fiscal under the lee of the Robben Island this morning, they were not found. Their house at the Salt River had been totally emptied of everything, and all the boxes were open with nothing therein. All the provisions, fowls, etc. had been removed. Martin Jochumsen left a debt of 395 gulden to the Honourable Company, 250 gulden of which was debt contracted in the fatherland and owing to a certain Hendrik Egbertsen, so that the Honourable Company has suffered a loss of at least 145 guldens in his case, while the other has a credit balance of 24 guldens with the company, but other freemen have suffered great losses in money owed by him. As a result, in order to prevent such desertion by sea and such like unfortunate occurrences, freemen will have to be forbidden to go on board in future. Nou ons weet, hulle het in die verlede, het hulle allerhande see lekkernye gaan verkoop aan die skep en dan natuurlijk vir hulle eie sak, maar dan smaak met daardie dae is nou verby. Nou die Dirksen ekspedisie, dis nou die ouens wat vir van Herwarden gaan loop soek het, hier keer hulle nou ook terug, maar hulle het nie baie uitgerig gekry nie. Breaking camp preparatory to leaving. Dis nou, hulle was by Oudasua gewees, hulle het nie eintlik iets gekry nie, maar hulle sê Oudasua is op pad om te trek. They obtained only 30 sheep for their beads and the natives being unwilling to sell more. The interpreter Eva also told them that the natives had sold all they wanted to be rid of and they should therefore return. She said that she would proceed inland with her sister and thereafter possibly pay a visit to the commander, and that she would keep faith with us, for, as she said in Dutch, she had a Dutch heart inside her, and would never forget the Dutch, but would always try to be of service to us whenever she could. Like her sister and brother-in-law, she was, according to native custom, mounted on an ox as if she were a lady of quality instead of travelling on foot with the rest. So Eva gaan so 'n bietjie saam met haar familie trek. Ons het nou gelees hoe haar familie met hulle klomp beeste en so aan op en af hier in die hele Kaapgebied trek. En Eva sê sy wil 'n bietjie dit loop doen. Dit is haar mense, sy vat 'n pilgrimage. En ou Cyrilkie gaan nou praat, moet ek maar afsny vir Cyril. Moet ek maar die episode net hier afsluit, gaan my tyd spaar vir volgende week. Dan hoef ek nie so hard voor te berei nie. Die ding is, die goed wat nou in die boek opkom, alles is, jy weet, goed wat ek nie wil oorlees nie. Dus ek kom het nou so stadig vat. En ek probeer my beste om al die woorde mooi uit te druk. Ek maak net so hier en daar 'n foutjie, maar julle ken my mos nou ook al so. Ek sien almal het verdwyn, daar is net volk en current viewers. Mense het seker die YouTube het seker die mense afgegooi, te veel truth bombs wat hier uitkom. Nou maar as almal nou gaan bogger of gaan ek nou maar sommer tot ziens sê. Dan vat ons van volgende week hier af. Ons het net so 2 of 3 bladsye gelees. Nu was er dan 'n bietjie meer as 2 of 3 bladsye gelees. Ons het nou maar goeie, want ek het nog baie voorberei. Dan kan ek volgende week afvat, kan ek net in die boek inspring en begin lees. Daar gaan ek hom afsny vir 8 uur. Ek het geen kapsie gekry in die kletskolom nie. Ek weet nie of my livestream nog in die gang is nie. Maar ek het geen kapsie gekry in die kletskolom nie. Dan gaan ek maar vir julle sê, dankie dat julle ingeskakel het, daar's geen skaamte om julle kop uit julle gat uit te trek nie. Staan op vir daardie mense wat vir jou opstaan en volhard en hou koers.